Alright, I'm back again for another video. And for today, I would like to talk about something. What happened is that earlier, I don't know, it was a month ago maybe. Anyway, I had this long discussion with this guy on the internet, on YouTube, and it was about a video rant on One Piece. And as I'm going through this little discussion with this guy and trying to build an idea about what is actually going on within the anime community, I start to realize about how sad this community has become, about how corrupted the kind of culture, the anime subculture has become with the current generation. I remember back in the 90s and early 2000s, the culture was completely different. It was completely different because the people of previous generations were of a different league of people. I mean, let's be honest about that, because you take a look at the current situation within the anime industry, comparing between the current generation and the previous one, it's like day and night, okay? Because through what I noticed, back in the 90s and early 2000s, the whole subculture, the whole geek culture was kind of a niche thing. It was still in the underground. It was a subculture that only people who shared the passion used to join, used to sign up for. But since like sometime during late 2000s, this geek culture started rising to the mainstream. It started becoming more popular, and unfortunately it did also attract this very large audience. Let's be honest, like if you really want to call if you really want to call things by their name, it did attract a slew of idiots. I mean, let's be frank here. And the reason why I believe that is because when I look at the way how do they react to the comment I type, it's all personal. It's nothing about the issues I am pointing at. It's never about what I'm criticizing. It's about me versus them. And just through this, you start seeing how people are building an identity over this culture. It's becoming like a sort of a religion, like a sort of cult they subscribe to. Now back to One Piece. Why I would like to talk about One Piece specifically? Well, the reason is pretty simple. First thing, the franchise is the most popular, is the most sold franchise in the entire market. Second thing, One Piece is the typical example everything going wrong within the modern anime industry, within the current situation of this business. One of the things you're gonna notice about this particular franchise is how long the show is. Just to let you know, for people who don't know about this, but One Piece is a story that started back in 1999, and I'm not sure if it was 1999 or 1998, but it doesn't matter, because what matters is that the show is still running to these days, which is something completely ridiculous. Because when you think about it, the first generation, the early generation who used to watch this show, they are not the teenager they used to be anymore, back in the days. See, shonen in Japanese language, it means the teenager boy. Now, I remember when I started watching that, I think I started back in 2001 or 2002. And at that time, I was pretty young. I was pretty young, and it made total sense to sit and watch a show, to be a part of that community, because that pretty much where I used to calibrate at that stage of my life. Now, you tell me that the show is still running to these days, 20 years later. Most of the people who started watching the show, they are not the kids they used to be anymore. They are adults. Some of them are married, some of them are with kids, having kids, which is not my case. But my point is this: I stopped following the show back in 2012. And the reason why I stopped watching the show, I'm pretty sure that there are plenty of factors that were part of the decision I made about just stop watching the show. But I think the main reason it was the decline of the franchise itself. the way how the show started downgrading after having reaching its pinnacle. I believe that One Piece has reached its pinnacle back in 2010, and that was the season of Blackbeard versus the Marine. I think that's when the show has reached its prime. I kept on watching even after that. I think that I watched the season that came after, which was the season covering the story of Ace, Sabo, and Luffy's childhood, which was a pretty decent story. It would be interesting to learn about in order to build a better idea about what is going on within the One Piece universe. But the weird part is that after the end of this season, things start hitting south. Things weren't as interesting as they used to be, or they weren't getting as good as the previous season. So basically what happened is that it reached its pinnacle and then it starts slowly disintegrating. It starts slowly dying. And it all intersected with the fact that the earlier generation of the fan base were also started growing. And slowly, as a follower of the show, as a viewer, I start questioning about what was the point of even following this show anymore. Like, things start getting more and more lame. So on one side you get the fact that the show is declining, but on the other side, because of the length of the show and me growing, me developing a more sophisticated sense of critical thinking, it get to the point where I couldn't watch that shit anymore. It get to the point where it became hard for me to put the effort to finish those episodes, to finish those chapters, until I get to the point where I was like, yo, this is not gonna work. I am not gonna spend any more time watching. Now, this also happened back in 2012 when I discovered the American shows. I discovered like a big franchise, like Prison Break, Breaking Bad, The Walking Dead. I remember I mentioned The Walking Dead in the comment section, and I see a lot of people making fun of me watching The Walking Dead. I mean, just to make it clear, The Walking Dead is a very smart story. And based on what I see, the only people who disagree with this fact are either people who never watched the story, they never invested the time to give this intellectual property a chance, or they are just not at the level of digesting and absorbing the subliminal messages the writers are trying to share with the viewers, unfortunately. Now, this said, because beside being a part of this community since the late 90s, I am also planning to make it into the comic industry, the American comic industry, which is the equivalent of the Japanese manga. It's the same industry, it's the same domain to a certain degree. I mean, yeah, there's a certain nuance between the two cultures, but manga is just this Japanese version of Western comics. There is a video on YouTube, and if I'm not lying, I think that the title of the video is "The Sad Truth About Being a Mangaka." A mangaka stands for the comic artist, the guy who draws and writes the manga. So in this video, the guy is basically exposing the harsh truth about the conditions, about the miserable conditions those Japanese comic artists are living in, about how the industry is exploiting those artists. You see, this is something that the average idiot doesn't even take to account. This is something that someone with no sense of critical thinking, a kid, okay, a teenager, is not at the level of analyzing and understanding. Those artists, they make no money from the art they're making. Not only that, but because of the hard conditions, because of the pressure of the deadlines, they are developing all kind of health issues due to the sleep deprivation, due to the long hours of sitting on those desks, developing all kind of chronic back pain and other type of posture issues. It's just inhuman. But the funny part is that even the guy making the video, he doesn't seem to understand, to see how the predatory corporate environment is exploiting those talented people. He's taking a very, very defensive position about what is going wrong within the industry. I think he made the statement of how those artists are signing for this kind of detrimental lifestyle, and how it's all made by choice. Okay, first let me stop you right off the bat. When you say by choice, what do you mean by that? Like, is there any second option? Because I don't believe there's a second option. So artists are stuck between following their passion and getting something out of it, or ending up working like a server in a restaurant or other type of minimum wage blue collar jobs. I don't see any kind of choice when it comes to this particular situation. I don't think that those artists have a choice. You see, back in the days, the American comic artists used to have the same problem. See, companies like DC and Marvel, they're like two titans in when it comes to this particular market. They have a complete control over the franchises, all the franchises, when it comes to superhero genre, and they completely monopolize the market. And the people, the talented artists and writers who worked on developing those issues ended up not making any money from the work they made, because all the money goes to the franchise, which is owned by DC and Marvel. So what they basically did is that they made this decision of taking their right back. This is what they've done. They launched a new company. They call it Image Comics. It's the same company that published the Walking Dead comics. The thing about Image Comics is that it gives to the author the right of owning their intellectual property, which is not the case with the other companies like Marvel or DC or Shonen Jump. Yes, there is a certain percentage. Of course, the company has to make a living and you gotta make some profit from the job, but nothing comparable to what is going on within the other predatory type of magazines, type of companies. Most of the money goes to the author's account, and I believe that is the fair way of treating those artists. Artists in Japan, and especially when it comes to this genre, to this field of comics, they have no rights, and the whole industry needs a reform. The problem now is that first thing you need to understand what causes the downgrade of the quality of the current anime industry. Those chapters you are reading on a weekly basis, they have to be all written, drawn, and polished in a matter of 1 week. And we are talking about 20 pages per week. This is insane, especially when it comes to a show that has been going on for over 20 years. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine what is it like to be sitting on a desk on a daily basis for the rest of your life? Just think about all kind of conditions you will be developing. If you go back to the video I mentioned early on, you're gonna find out that some of the artists are suffering so much to the point where they can't even create those chapters anymore. Just imagine how counterproductive this kind of policy is. And the system doesn't give a shit about the artist. Why? Because the power is in the hands of those businessmen, those MBA, those close-minded idiots who have no fucking clue about what the whole culture is about, and they are only there for profit. Because you need to understand that once this industry has turned mainstream, it has become like a huge market. It has become a source of income for a very large demography. And this is the part you see, every time a field goes mainstream, it brings prosperity, it brings money, and it attracts a huge chunk of the public as an audience, a demography of consumers, basically. You see, those consumers, most of them, they do not share the passion as the previous earlier pioneers, the first generations of fan base, the first generation of members of that subculture. We are talking about a completely breed of people right here. And that's why I was trying to articulate back early on in this video about what I noticed when I was trying to communicate with those people, typing those comments and trying to point the finger about what is going wrong with the current system, is that they don't give a shit. Because here's the thing, like I've said, it's gonna take for the author less than a week to generate over 20 pages, okay? And he has to be going through this on a weekly basis, which means he cannot miss any of the deadlines. Why? Because that's the way how the system works. You see, even if the author want to stop, it's going to be very hard for him, because if he stops, that may cost him losing a job, or that may cost him, he's going to find it very hard to start or launch a completely different IP and gain the same success he get with the current one. So he's basically stuck in this endless cycle of generating stories and meeting deadlines. However, this kind of policy, what it does is that it downgrades the quality of the production itself, because technically it takes way much more than a week to develop a good arc, to develop the characters, to develop the world, and fixing the flaws, and then coming up with highly highly detailed good quality type of art. But to the Shonen Jump magazine, none of that shit matters. What matters is artists need to meet the deadline, okay? And it doesn't matter how trashy it is, as long as there is a wide audience of low intellectual or non-intellectual individuals who are okay with consuming any kind of garbage without thinking, just because it's published by the Shonen Jump magazine. So the audience is not as selective and critical as it used to be. You see, it's not about the passion for the field anymore. It's not about the art anymore. It's just about being part of this group, like hanging on the bandwagon, basically. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? So if you think about the root cause of the problem, it has more to do with the fan base than it has to do with the system itself. I mean, they are both major components, major factors when it comes to the decline of such industry, but the root cause remains the audience itself. So if you want to blame someone, you're definitely going to blame the people who support the type of low quality content those magazines are publishing. See, until you become more critical, until you develop a more sophisticated sense of critical thinking, until you can distinguish between high quality art and garbage, those companies won't take you seriously. Because as long as there are people like you who are going to buy, spend the money, and consume any kind of trash those people are providing, they are not gonna put the effort. Because at the end of the day, like I've said, those people don't care about the culture. They only care about the paycheck. They only care about maintaining the cycle. You see, most of the people who are making money from that business, they are not artists, they are not fans, they are nobody. They're just people who want to pay the bills. So once the audience start dictating the kind of quality they are expecting, the business, the industry, the members of that, the people who have the power of making the difference will be forced to do so, not because of the love for the art, but because of a survival purpose. They know that if they don't, you guys are going to boycott them, and you guys are not gonna buy their shit, and they gotta figure out another way to make their living. So at the end of the day, it's all in the hands of the fans. At the end of the day, it's the fans who define the quality of the content the industry is making. But again, it is also a matter of, it's not only the fan, I say the fans, but artists also need to take initiative. I believe that the artist should fight back. I believe that the artist should not submit to that kind of detrimental policies, because it has been proven that it's super counterproductive. It downgrades the quality of the art they are creating, and you don't enjoy the experience. The whole shit they look miserable. I mean, I know I have mentioned that 2 times already, but I would one more time recommend you to go and look for the video I mentioned early on, just to see what I'm talking about, because that is not the way how artists are supposed to be treated. See, if you really want to see highly sophisticated, well and deep written type of intellectual properties coming to life, you need to take the power from those businessmen and giving it to the artist. The artist needs to own some money from the work he's making. That's number one, because he cannot live in those conditions. And second thing, he should also have a certain freedom when it comes to the deadlines, because art requires time. Okay, like this crazy idea of generating 20 pages per week is completely insane. I mean, what kind of pages are you producing? This is junk kind of art. It's like processed trash food. But again, as long as they are this category of moronic consumers who are okay with consuming whatever what the Shonen Jump is publishing, then things are gonna keep on going from bad to worse. There is no way around this. So you need to work on educating this fan base, but also the artist needs to get to the point where they have to take their right back. Otherwise, you see the thing, they're not gonna get their right just by putting more work. They really need to stand up for themselves. And unfortunately, when it comes to Japan, there's this notion of working to death. I don't know what's the Japanese word they use, but I heard him mentioning that in that video. A really crazy narrative they are subscribing to, and it's also a cultural issue. I look at the show called Death Note, and it gives me hope. It does give me hope, because when I look at that show, and especially when I'm talking about the show, I'm talking about the writer. I mean, don't get me wrong, the art is amazing. I believe that the artist, I think his name is Obata, did a great job. But when it comes to the credit, I would give 80% of the credit to the writer, because what that guy has done when it comes to innovating this genre, we are talking about a visionary level type of performance right here. And he also saw through the game, and he didn't fall in the trap of becoming another statistic. Basically, it gives me hope, because I believe that we need more artists like the Death Note author, and less of the artists like Eiichiro Oda, because that guy, I mean, with all my respect, and I used to be a fan of his work, seeing the way how he got trapped in that cycle and never figured out a way to save his art from the corrupted policy, I was quite disappointed, to be honest. But again, I'm looking at shows like Death Note, and I'm like, it gives me hope. I truly believe that there are plenty of talented, gifted people out there that if they had a chance, they could reform this industry. They could take this industry to a completely new level. But again, it's all in the hands of, one, the audience, and two, the artists themselves. Because like I say, those NBA don't give a shit. They only respond to fear. They are like politicians, you know. So yes, so this was my little reaction about the conversation I had with a guy named was it Yellow Bee? I don't remember. I think he invited me for a debate. I'm like, dude, I'm not a debater. I'm just trying to share my opinion with my fellow anime fan. All right, so this said, and hope I see you in another video. Take care.